Today, we're going to be looking at how you can pick an IT partner, and we're going to help you avoid any of those red flags so you don't get caught in a long-term contract and pay big.
At M2 Technology, we're on a mission to make IT accessible to everyone. Join us on our journey to demystify the ever-evolving world of business technology. Are you ready to get unplugged?
Welcome back to IT Unplugged. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Mike.
And today, we're going to be talking about what you should be looking for when you partner with an MSP. Now, MSP is something that we use all the time, another acronym in kind of our field, but would you mind just explaining what an MSP is and what it stands for?
For sure. Managed Solutions Provider or Managed Service Provider. Same thing, different phrasing. We are an MSP. The IT guys or the networking people or the consultants, right? MSP.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're kind of determining who you're going to partner with, and I think that word is very, very, very important, who you're going to partner with when it comes to your MSP or, sometimes your IT vendor. What are some of the things that you really need to look out for when you're making that decision?
Well, first and foremost, it's somebody that you can trust, right? Because they're intertwined with your business, with your network, right? And not only are they handling the security, or they're handling the inner workings or the back end, or you hire, you fire, they're deploying somebody or taking somebody's access away, but they're also kind of helping you grow, right?
Yeah.
So as you grow, you need more services, or you need more things, or you need to maybe do things a different way. You want to trust that person or trust that organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think trust is a big one because of the nature of the information that you're looking at. I mean, you kind of have an understanding of everything that's going on in the business, and you have access to most of it just by the nature of the job. I guess I'd say when it comes to the clients that we partner with, or like specifically that you partner with, what are the things that they value most of all within that partnership?
We say it a lot, but people working with people, that personal interaction. Hey, you call, you're having an issue this morning, you call your guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that feels good, it sounds good, but that's actually real life. Like you call your guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot of people's guy. Same with the other people that work with M2. They're all someone's guy, right? And people love that.
Yeah.
The second thing down from there would be constantly evolving or looking for products in the best interest of the customers you work with. So
Sure.
Maybe what we're working with right now for data backup isn't the best anymore, right? In October, something great comes out. We research it, we vet it. Hey, we feel really strongly that this would work very well for the customers in our medical sphere.
Sure.
Like, great. We've got a case for this, and hey, we think that this is a better product for this reason than this reason. It happens to be the same price, it's less price, it's more price, whatever it might be. Perfect. We bring this to their attention, and a lot of times it's just kind of a set it and forget it type thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is your backup, sounds good, everybody's got the same, we're done. And then 8 years later, you're still in the same thing, nothing changed. Maybe updated, whatever, but like it's the exact same product and you're not off any better. We're always looking around for, staying current on trends, but looking around for what could potentially be a better offering to benefit the customer. Yeah,
absolutely. So we have responsiveness, and maybe we have that innovation. Mm-hmm. I just want to kind of take a step back, because when it comes to that responsiveness, okay, here's what we hear when we walk into a place. A lot of the times is like, yeah, it takes forever to get back to us. We have a problem, and it's a week before it gets solved. Eventually, I just figure it out, or then I stop calling overall. Now, a lot of
emailed, and then I text, and then they got back to me on email, but it was for something else. And then I called, and then I got this person, and
absolutely. And we hear this stuff, and I think there's two different scenarios that kind of play out here. Well, maybe there's more than that, but there's one where it's like, there's one where they started out the decision-making process when they're figuring out who their MSP is going to be, and they were treated like a VIP. It's like, oh, you want a quote? Let me get you a quote. Let me get this going right away. And, oh, you want a meeting? Here, we'll be there right away. And you're going to be, with this person or with this team. But then as soon as they sign the contract, it's like, okay, now we're going to hand you off to our third tier people. And you're never going to see me again. And it's never, like, see you later. I will never see you again kind of thing. And it's like, oh, we got him. And, and then there's that other aspect where maybe it's just you don't know any better and you're like, oh, this is what IT providers do. They take a little bit longer to get back to you. They must be really busy, when that's not necessarily the case with a good MSP that's out there. So like, what are some of the things that a business owner could do when they're picking that MSP to like kind of test responsiveness? Like, where would you look to determine if this is going to be somebody that's going to be responsive to me?
If a business owner is kind of interviewing, in the interviewing stage, sure. I mean, you could ask, what is their current workflow, or that, let's say that I'm on site with them, right? We're on site somewhere, we're prospecting, or, we have a meeting or whatever. What does your current workflow look like? And workflow meaning, hey, how many customers do you support on the daily or on the monthly, or whatever? Are you getting 100 calls a day personally, or are you getting 10 calls a day? What does an average look like? And I think that's a very safe question to ask, because if you kind of fumble, it depends on the day, whatever. Sure, it does, but I think that you could give kind of a blanket statement, or the tech could give kind of a blanket statement of, okay, well, a normal day is scheduled out, 5 days in advance. All right, so it's scheduled, but then I also get maybe 10 break fix calls. It's as easy as that, right? Yeah. It's, if somebody doesn't know, or they don't really want to answer or whatever, maybe a little bit of a red flag, kind of sus. Just in my opinion. Perhaps you could ask, hey, maybe if you're dealing with more of a help desk type environment,
sure.
Hey, what's the workflow or what's the call flow for that? Okay, you call them to this number that goes to a help desk. From help desk, if they can't figure it out, it's a set amount of time, or maybe it just qualifies to be a different type of issue or whatever. It gets passed off to level 2, or it gets passed off to your consultant on site, or whatever that workflow is. So before you get on board with something and then you're not happy. More often than not, it's fairly transparent, right? Yeah. You'll know what you're getting into, but sometimes people don't know, right? You just sign on the dotted line, you're like, perfect, it's off my desk, on to the next thing.
Yes, absolutely. You get into trouble. Yeah, and even asking, like, what's your average response time? Like, how quickly do you get back to customers, and just being flat out with it. And you kind of have to, as somebody that's worked in customer service and metrics, like, you can mess with numbers sometime, unfortunately. It's like, hey, what's your average response time on a ticket? It's like, 5 seconds. It's like, oh, wait, what? Because you automatically generate something that says, oh, we have your ticket now. And then it's a 5-second response time. Like, you kind of need to, for me personally, what I like to see is what urgency is built into the company, even from a sales standpoint, when you're asking a question, even in the beginning of the process. Because sometimes you get treated like a VIP, but like a big red flag is you say, hey, I need a quote for this. And it even takes like 5 days to get something back, and like an initial response or a quote. Like that's
somebody trying to convince you to work with them.
So like if that's the case, it's not going to be any different when it comes to the IT solutions that are there. So like that should be a giant red flag if that's the expectation for them, is like, yeah, we can just kind of wait. They'll be okay. Because that's treating you like a number and not a partner. So those are some of the things that me personally, when I see it, I would look at, because the last thing you want is, it's so funny. We were talking to somebody that's like very, very into the technology space, and we were telling him about our company and different things, and he's like, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there, because MSPs are a lot like internet service providers. Like everybody just hates them. Like, it's like, oh man, that hurts my heart a little bit. Because a lot of times that urgency isn't there. I mean, we've all seen the spectrum, or maybe I shouldn't be calling them out, but like your internet service provider, when you're on hold for them for 45 minutes, and you're like, oh man, I do not feel valued. the last thing you need is for your company and your employees.
I'm going to switch. Oh, well, it's a giant pain in the butt. Actually, I'm not going to switch. Like,
yeah. You know what? Let's just pivot into that for a second, because that's another great question, I think, to look at when you're picking an MSP is, what is your cancellation process look like? I think that can tell a lot about a company. So, you've been working in this space for a while. You've looked at a lot of different companies. What's normal cancellation kind of look like if you were going to end your service with an MSP?
It's to the point where somebody is signed, right? They're signed with a different MSP, you mean?
Well, no, let's say they're considering switching over to someone else. Or when...
What is our onboarding, or what does a prospective onboarding look like? Ideally, it's completely ironed out, right? You've got a multi-step process to know, okay, hey, you sign on a dotted line, perfect. Then this is what happens next. Next here's the verbiage that you need to send a cancellation letter, or the verbiage that you could use to read on a phone call or in person or whatever. Part of that verbiage would be like a credentials request. Right?
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, we're breaking up. It's not me, it's you. And also give me back all of my things, please.
Yeah.
And
don't throw them on the lawn.
Like, ideally, I need to know when you're going to give me my things. Sometimes there's, and included in the verbiage, sometimes there's things that the prior MSP, they're theirs, right? Like maybe what we see sometimes is like the backup.
Yep.
The device that does the backing up maybe is not owned by the business. They just pay a monthly service on it, and the device is still property of the prior MSP. And in that case, like, by all means, that's theirs.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
We respect that. Same with perhaps like a router, or perhaps they have, kind of rare, but perhaps there's like payment terms or something on devices.
Yeah.
Hey, we bought that laptop last year, but it was on a 24-month. So we've actually it's been part of our monthly. Yeah. And you're like, well, did you guys know you have 13 months left on that? Like, if you leave, you're probably just going to have to pay it out, right? So asking the question and then giving a fair amount of time for response, right? You're breaking up with somebody after all, so like they're not, you should be the priority, but you're not the priority in most cases. It's like, hey, we'll get back to you in 3 days when Jim's back. Yeah. Right? And you're like, all right.
And I know this could be, I don't want to say like an unpopular opinion, but I think asking what their cancellation terms is right up front is super relevant. And I'd almost say the longer the contract, the more skeptical I would be of the service that they're going to provide. And I don't know if there's a direct correlation, but like, I don't understand the super long-term contracts in the MSP space.
Don't get me wrong. Hopefully it's a relationship, like you said, right? There's trust, there's whatever, but hopefully you trust them enough that you want to work with them for forever, right? And years to come, and it's a great relationship. But right, if you're signing on the dotted line, there's an attractive price, it's dangling in front of you like the Allstate commercial, right? And you're like, gotta be faster, or Safer, or whoever. And you're really fast with it, and you grab it, and you get that price, and you're all excited. And it's 8 years.
Yeah.
Like, 8 years? I mean, are you going to be in the same building?
Yeah.
Ideally, everyone grows, right? So you've got X amount of more employees. You're working with more revenue. You have a larger business. Maybe that, although they're great, maybe that's a great MSP. Maybe it just doesn't fit your sphere anymore. You've got to have somebody that can cover multi-states. Maybe they can't. Maybe they can, but you're their first one, and it's there's some growing pains. Like, maybe they just don't make sense after, and you're locked in for 8 years. That's scary.
And I mean, I don't want to compare MSPs to ISPs again, or internet service providers, because that's the last thing we want. But it's an interesting thing where, all right, I'll say my internet service provider has raised my bill every year, just year after year, and they're just like, try us. We know there's no one else around. Like what are you gonna do? But when it comes to the thing is, they know that like I can't leave, or when I do leave, they're like, whatever, we got enough money out of them. Like, we've seen some MSPs do the same thing to customers, where they're like, a customer is potentially going to switch to, let's say, M2 technology. Okay, like that has happened in the past. And they're like, oh, crap, we're in a 3-year contract and we're in year 1. And the person comes back, they're like, hey, we'll buy out whatever we have, but we want to make this switch. And they're just like, we're going to put every fee and make it so inconvenient, impossible that you can actually switch. Yeah. And they're okay with that because it's like such a short-term view. It's, you know what, we're going to get every penny we can out of this customer in 2 years. We know they're going to leave, but like we still got them for 2 years. It's very revealing to the nature of that MSP and what I would say is like another kind of red flag when it comes to, when you're picking that provider. So
yeah. Large cancellation fees or buyouts or like that type of thing, unless there's terms, you're buying a doodad, you're buying a piece of hardware and you're buying it on terms. All right. Well, I mean, you can't be upset if you're leasing a car and then you want to get a different car after 2 months and like, there's penalties. That's on you. But sure. if the term or the cancellation verbiage is just based off of canceling a service when there's not, hardware at stake or licensing or something that can't be reversed. Yeah, that's kind of sleazy a little bit.
Yeah, a little off.
Yeah, plenty of times we've run into interesting cancellation policies from customers that we've converted, and it kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. You're like, people are really doing that. And like that's an interesting business model just from the standpoint of like. When if somebody has to leave, even if it's for good reasons, like we said, like growth or, whatever, hey, really exciting.
Sure.
You should be happy for your customer, right?
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
You guys outgrew us. That's great.
That's awesome.
Like that's awesome. You have 500 employees, like maybe you just can't support that. So maybe that's a good thing that they're finding someone else. You hate to see them leave, but they're growing. That's great. By the way, you have this giant cancellation fee. Like, what if they still wanted to work with you to some extent?
Absolutely.
The owner of the company wants to work with you on this other business that they have. They have an ice cream shop and they're like, hey, we have 10 employees here. Like, you're no longer working with us because we've outgrown you. Like, really sorry about that. But how about you work with my ice cream company? Like, that's awesome. Yeah. Or just, they reference you to a different vendor that they work with or a different company that they work with. You kind of soured that relationship, I would assume.
Yeah.
If you're like, we canceled with these guys and they gave us a bill for $10,000 on the way out the door. Gotta love that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you should work with them.
Yeah. Don't burn those bridges. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think just taking your time when you're picking an MSP too and meeting with multiple ones to kind of see, like, listen to what kind of questions they're asking you. Because if they're actually interested in like what your company goals are and how they can get you there versus just, hey, how many people do you have and, what's your budget? Like questions that
what
are
you
just
willing to spend?
Yeah, what are you willing to spend? Like questions like that just lead to commodity trading, and it's like, we can sell you these 3 things, and then we're just going to leave you alone, and that's about it. But we're not a partner in the business. We're the vendor that sold you these 3 things, and when we call, we'll answer when we get to it, kind of thing.
Looping back to your original question a few minutes ago about what else would be important questions to ask, perhaps, references are references, but maybe check their Google reviews.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's like Yelp or their website or whatever.
Sure.
Check their actual reviews from customers.
Yeah.
Ideally, they're truthful.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But like on the off chance they are not, they are purchase reviews or whatever. Like that's its own thing. But correct. If there's there's some legitimate review sources and they reference the company that they're reviewing from, and hey, we've worked with this place now for we've worked with these guys for 4 years, and we like this person at the company, like, oh, okay, that's a legitimate review. They know the person. Like, that's crazy. When Mike and Brandon were on site talking about that, they referenced this other guy. So like, yeah, that checks out.
Yep.
If you have a question about that, maybe ask the person that is on site with you. Hey, we saw in this review, this person really likes you guys, but this issue they mentioned that they didn't like.
Yeah.
Like, can you speak on that? Right.
Yeah,
that's beneficial.
Be challenging. You know what I mean? Because that partnership is something that, once again, it's built on trust. And sometimes you have to have difficult conversations. And just don't be afraid to ask the things that need to be asked when it comes to picking out your MSP. And fake reviews, you got me. We're gonna table that for later because I'm passionate about that. Where you see some companies, you're like, we're at. Once I said I'm going to table
That
it.
is
I'm not going to go down this. I'm not going to go down this path. A different conversation. Thank you guys so much for listening to IT Unplugged. We hope you found some value here today. Feel free to follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those socials out there. And if you need any IT help at all, reach out to them too. We'd be happy to provide any services that you're looking for.